A girl waited 4 years for a letter that would change her life. It never came, or so she believed. She thought she wasn't good enough. She thought God had forgotten her. She thought the university had rejected her. But the letter did come. Her brother collected it, used the money, got married, and watched her suffer for 4 years. This is the story of Janeth, the girl whose future was stolen by the person she trusted most, and how the woman he married became her greatest ally. Let me take you back to March 2020. Ogbomoso Town, Oyo State, a small community where dreams were expensive and opportunities were rare. Janeth Adeyemi was 18 years old. She had just finished secondary school, top of her class, brilliant, hard-working, and full of a hope so bright it almost hurt to look at. Her father had died 3 years before. Her mother, Mama Adeyemi, sold vegetables at Sabo Market. They were poor, but Janeth was their pride. Everyone said she would go far. Everyone said she would make the family name proud. That March, Janeth sat the federal government scholarship examination. She had studied for 6 months, every night under a kerosene lamp in their small house, bent over textbooks while the rest of the street slept. The scholarship was worth 1 million naira. Full tuition, accommodation, books, monthly stipend. 4 years at any Nigerian university. It was her only way out, her only chance. Her best friend Ada took the exam alongside her. They were both confident, both hopeful. Ada talked about them attending the University of Ibadan together, sharing a room, building their futures side by side. Janeth wanted to believe her. God knows she wanted to believe. The results were supposed to come out in June. June came and went, nothing July, nothing August. Still nothing. Janeth started to worry. She called her older brother Abu. 25 years old, living in Lagos, working as an accountant in a small firm, doing okay by their family standards. She trusted him completely. She asked him to help her check, to visit the Ministry of Education office, to find out if her name was anywhere on the list. He promised her he would. 2 weeks later, in late August 2020, Abu called back. He told her he had gone to the ministry. He had checked everywhere. He had spoken to someone in the scholarship department. He had searched 3 times by her name. Then he told her she wasn't on the final list. The world stopped. Janeth sat down on the floor of their small living room, legs weak, heart shattered. She asked if he was certain, if he had checked properly. He said yes 3 times and that he was sorry. He suggested she reapply the following year, that there were other opportunities. She told him Mama was calling her and hung up. That's when the tears came, quiet tears. The kind that arrive when hope dies and you don't even have the energy to scream. 3 days later, Ada knocked on Janeth's door. She was smiling and jumping and clutching an envelope. Her scholarship letter had arrived. Full scholarship, University of Ibadan. 4 years, everything paid for. Janeth hugged her friend, said all the right things, smiled in all the right places, but inside she was breaking. Ada noticed her face and asked about Janeth's own letter. Janeth told her what Abu had said, that she wasn't selected. Ada was genuinely sad. She said it made no sense, that Janeth had scored higher than her, that she couldn't understand how it was possible. Janeth said she didn't know either. Maybe she had made a mistake on the form. Maybe she just wasn't good enough. She had already started believing it. 1 week later, Ada left for university. Her whole family gathered to see her off. Neighbors came to congratulate her. There was jollof rice, soft drinks, prayers, celebration. Janeth stood at the back of the crowd, watching, clapping, smiling. But inside, she felt like she was drowning. That night, she wrote in her diary, Ada left today. I'm happy for her. Really, I am. But I can't stop thinking that should have been me too. We were supposed to go together, but I failed. I don't understand how, but I failed. Maybe God has other plans for me. I just wish I knew what they were. She closed the diary, turned off the lamp and cried herself to sleep. But here is what Janeth didn't know. What she couldn't have known, she hadn't failed. Her name was on that scholarship list. In fact, she had scored higher than Ada. Her scholarship was worth more, 1 million naira. Ada's was 850,000, and the letter had arrived. On August 18, 2020, the Federal Scholarship Board sent out acceptance letters to all successful candidates. Janeth's letter was addressed care of Abu Adeyemi, Flat 7, Blessed House, Surulere, Lagos. They had used his addresses on the application form because Ogbomoso's postal service was unreliable. The letter arrived at the main post office in Lagos on August 20. A notification card was sent to Abu's apartment. You have a registered letter waiting. Please collect with valid ID. On August 25, Abu went to the post office. He showed his ID, signed for it, and the postal clerk handed him a big brown envelope with the federal government seal and the word important stamped on the front. He opened it right there. He read that his little sister had won a 1 million naira scholarship. Full coverage, 4 installments across 4 years. Her dreams laid out on official letterhead. He stood in that post office for 10 minutes, staring. He should have been happy. He should have called her immediately. But instead, he thought about something else. 2 months before, in June 2020, Abu had gotten engaged to a woman named Kioma. Beautiful 23, educated, from a respectable family in Ibadan. He loved her. He wanted to marry her. But Chioma's family had demanded a bride price of 800,000 naira, and Abu didn't have it. His salary was 150,000 naira a month. His savings barely reached 200,000. He needed 600,000 more. He had been stressing, borrowing small amounts from friends, considering loan apps, running numbers that never added up. And now, standing in that post office holding his sister's scholarship letter, a terrible thought entered his mind. The first installment, 250,000 naira, would be paid directly to Janeth's account once she submitted the acceptance forms. If he had her documents, if he could forge her signature, if he could open an account in her name at a bank where nobody would ask too many questions, he could get that money. He stood there and wrestled with himself. This was his sister, his baby sister who had looked up to him her whole life, her only chance at education, her only way out of poverty. But Kioma's family was pressuring him. The wedding was supposed to be in December, 4 months away. If he didn't pay the bride price soon, they would cancel everything. Abu made a choice. The wrong choice. He folded the letter, put it in his bag, went home and threw it in the trash. Then he called Janeth and lied to her face, told her she wasn't selected, listened to her cry, said he was sorry and hung up. That night he couldn't sleep. Guilt ate at him. But he told himself it was only temporary, that he would tell her eventually, that she was young, she could apply again next year, that he only needed this once. The lies we tell ourselves are always the most convincing. Over the next 3 months, Abu moved with cold precision. In September, he used old family documents to forge Janeth's signature and opened a bank account in her name at a small, unquestioning bank. In October, he submitted the scholarship acceptance forms, listing himself as her guardian and providing his own phone number and email as the contact. In November, the first payment arrived, 250,000 naira. He withdrew it immediately, added it to his savings, and paid Kioma's family the full bride price, 800,000 naira. In December 2020, Abu and Chioma got married. Beautiful wedding, 200 guests. Janeth was there, smiling, happy for her brother, with no idea that her stolen future had paid for the celebration she was clapping at. By May 2021, the second scholarship payment had arrived, another 250,000 naira. Abu used it to rent a 2-bedroom apartment in Surulere and furnish it for his new home with Kioma. In August 2021, the university sent a message to the phone number on file, Abu's phone, asking why Janeth had not resumed classes, warning that the scholarship would be revoked if she didn't confirm attendance. Abu deleted the message. By September 2021, the scholarship was officially cancelled. The remaining 500,000 naira was never released. But by then, it didn't matter. Abu had already taken what he needed, 500,000 naira, half of his sister's future. And Janeth? Janeth was in Ogbomoso, selling vegetables in the market, believing she had failed. 2 years passed. It was now 2022. Janeth was 20 years old. Still at the market, still selling vegetables, still living in the same small room she had lived in her whole life. But something had changed in her. The hope was gone. That bright, eager light her teachers used to talk about had dimmed. She wasn't sad anymore. She was just numb. Acceptance can look a lot like peace, but it isn't. It's just exhaustion dressed up as maturity. You might wonder why she didn't reapply for a scholarship. She did. In 2021, 1 year after the rejection, she applied to 3 different programs. All 3 rejected her. Most scholarship programs prioritize recent secondary school graduates, and by 2021, Janeth had been out of school long enough to be considered too old for most undergraduate awards. The window had closed. After the 3rd rejection, she stopped trying. What was the point? Instead, she helped her mother at the market, waking before 5 in the morning, buying tomatoes, peppers, and onions from the wholesalers, selling until 7 in the evening under a sun that showed no mercy. On a good day, she made 2,000 naira profit, on a bad day 500. But she sent money to Mama every week, helped pay the rent, bought kerosene for the lamp. She was surviving, just barely. At the market, there was a man named Adams, 22, tall, dark-skinned, with a quiet smile and kind eyes. He sold yams and potatoes from a wooden table 3 stalls away from Janeth's. He had been watching her for months, not in a troubling way, but in the quiet, wondering way of someone who sees a person clearly and wants to understand their story. One slow afternoon, he walked over and told her he had noticed her working every single day, rain or sun, and that she looked like someone who should be sitting in a university lecture hall, not here. Janeth's face hardened. She told him life doesn't always go the way we plan, and returned to her work. Adams walked back to his stall, but he didn't stop noticing her. Weeks passed. He kept showing up in small ways, sending customers her way when her sales were low, sharing his umbrella when it rained and she'd forgotten hers, helping fix her table when it broke. Slowly, she started to soften, started to smile at his jokes, started to talk. When he eventually asked about university, she told him about the scholarship she'd applied for, rejection, the 3 subsequent attempts, the doors that had closed. He called the system broken. She told him it didn't matter anymore, that dreams were for people who could afford them. Adam said she was still young, still had time. She said time for what? That she had no money and her mother needed her. He didn't push, but he made a mental note. Somewhere had made this girl believe she wasn't enough. Around December 2022, Abu came home for Christmas. He arrived in a borrowed car, wearing expensive clothes, carrying gifts, rice, chicken, 50,000 naira for Mama. Mama cried with gratitude and thanked God. Janeth came out of the kitchen to greet him, hugged him, smiled, asked about Lagos and Chioma. Abu told her Chioma was pregnant, 3 months along, and Janeth's smile widened genuinely. She was happy for him. Later that evening, they sat together in the small living room. Abu asked about her plans. She said she was just helping Mama, selling at the market. He suggested she consider learning a trade, hairdressing, tailoring, something to add value. Janeth laughed a short, bitter laugh and said she would think about it. Abu felt a pang of something. Guilt, perhaps regret. He pushed it down and told himself what he always told himself. It's too late now. What's done is done. She's okay. She's surviving. That's enough. But surviving is not the same as living. And he was the reason she was merely surviving. 2 more years crawled by. It was now 2024. Janeth was 22. 4 full years since that scholarship letter had arrived in Lagos. 4 years of waking before dawn, of selling vegetables, of watching her friends graduate and move forward while she stayed exactly where she was. But she had stopped complaining, stopped hoping. She just existed. Adams was still there, still patient, still kind. In October 2024, he finally asked her to lunch somewhere nice, not the market. She told him she wasn't the kind of girl a man like him should be interested in, that she was a market girl, no education, no prospects. He told her she was more than this, that she just couldn't see it yet. For the first time in years, Janeth felt something. Not hope exactly, but something close to it. She agreed to lunch. And that is how it started. Slowly, carefully, 2 people who had both known struggle finding something soft in a hard world. Meanwhile, in Lagos, Abu's life wasn't as perfect as it looked. Chioma had given birth in March 2023, a baby girl, beautiful and healthy and expensive. Diapers, formula, hospital bills, clothes. Abu's salary wasn't enough anymore. He started borrowing from friends, from his company, from loan apps. The debt piled up. The interest accumulated. And every night when he looked at his daughter sleeping peacefully, He thought about Janeth, the sister whose future he had stolen to build this life. He asked himself whether it had been worth it. He no longer knew. Then, in December 2024, something happened that changed everything. Ada came home for Christmas. She had graduated from the University of Ibadan in 2023 and was working as a banker in Ibadan now. She visited Janeth at the market one afternoon, bright and successful and genuinely delighted to see her old friend. But her excitement dimmed quickly when she realized Janeth was still at the same stall. She asked why Janeth had never tried again, had never found another way. Janeth explained. The 3 rejections, the age restrictions, the closed doors. Ada shook her head. Then she said something that made Janeth's hands go still. Ada said they had both been selected for the 2020 scholarship. She had seen the list with her own eyes at the Ministry of Education. She remembered it clearly because they had been so excited together. She remembered that Janeth had scored even higher than her. She remembered the exact amount. 1 million naira for Janeth, 850,000 for Ada. She had even asked about Janeth when she went to submit her own forms, and had been told that Janeth's documents had already been submitted. Janeth's mind raced. Her documents had been submitted, but she had never submitted anything. The letter would have been sent to Lagos to Abu. Abu was supposed to collect it and bring it to her. But Abu had said there was no letter. Abu had said she wasn't selected. She whispered her brother's name. Ada understood without another word needing to be spoken. She asked how Janeth planned to find out for certain. Janeth said she needed to go to the post office in Lagos. They kept records she needed to see for herself. That night, Janeth lay awake with her world tilting. She wanted to believe there was an innocent explanation, a mistake, a mix-up, something she was missing. But deep in her gut, beneath every generous interpretation she tried to construct, she already knew her brother had betrayed her. The next morning, Janeth found Adams and told him everything. She told him about Ada's words, about the scholarship list, about the letter that was supposed to come to Abu's address and never made it home. Adam's face darkened with a quiet fury as the picture became clear. He told her he was coming with her to Lagos. She tried to refuse. He told her she wasn't doing this alone. 3 days later, they took a bus to Lagos. The journey was 5 hours. Janeth barely spoke. Adam sat beside her, holding her hand, not saying much, simply being present. The main post office was chaos. People everywhere, long lines, brutal heat, relentless noise. They waited 2 hours before reaching a tired clerk in his 50s who sighed at the request. 4 years ago was a long time. But he typed the name into his computer, waited, and then read from the screen what the records showed. A scholarship notification letter from the Federal Scholarship Board, addressed to Miss Janeth Adeyemi, had arrived on August 18, 2020, and been collected on August 25, 2020. Collected by Abu Adeyemi. Janeth's breath caught. She asked to see the printed record. The clerk produced it. Clear and formal and undeniable, the federal government seal, her name, her brother's name, his scrawled signature. The date he had walked into this very post office and signed for her future. Adams caught Janeth as she stumbled. She stared at that paper for a long time. Her hands shook. She folded it carefully, placed it in her bag, and looked at Adams with eyes that had gone cold and still. She needed to see her brother now. They took a taxi to Surulere. Abu's address was on the postal record. A modest but decent apartment complex. Gated, clean. They found the building, 2nd floor, flat 7. Janeth stood at the door and knocked. A woman opened it. Beautiful, heavily pregnant, about 7 months, holding a little girl of about 2 on her hip. Her face was warm and welcoming. When Janeth said she was Abu's sister, the woman, Kioma, brightened immediately and invited them in. The apartment was nice. Not luxurious but comfortable. Leather couch, flat-screen television, air conditioning running, neat kitchen, family photos arranged on the wall. This life built on her stolen future. Kioma offered water and tried to make small talk, asking about Mama and Ogvamoso, cheerfully saying how much Abu talked about Janeth, how happy he would be to see her. Janeth answered in flat, emotionless sentences. Kioma sensed something was wrong but didn't push. The little girl played with blocks on the floor, innocent and unaware. 25 minutes later, the door opened. Abu walked in, Sarsin carrying his work bag. He looked up, saw Janeth froze. The colour left his face he already knew. Somehow standing there with his bag still in his hand, he already knew why she had come. Janeth asked Kioma to give them a few minutes alone, to take her daughter to the bedroom. Kioma looked between them, sensing danger, but nodded and went. The moment the door clicked shut, Janeth stood, pulled the post office document from her bag, and placed it on the table in front of her brother. She told him to explain it. His hands trembled as he picked up the paper. He read it, put it down slowly. Before he could form an excuse, Janeth told him what she knew. That 4 years ago she had asked him to check whether her scholarship letter arrived, and he had told her she wasn't selected. She told him what the paper said. She asked where her letter was, what he had done with her scholarship. The silence was long and terrible. Then quietly and with the voice of a man already defeated, Abu admitted he had taken it, used the money, for his wedding, for the bride price, for the apartment, for starting his life with Kioma. Adam stood up, fists clenched. Janeth's voice shook with a rage she had been carrying without knowing it for 4 years. She had thought she wasn't good enough. She had given up on everything. She had stopped dreaming, and all of it was because he had stood in a post office with her letter and chosen himself. She told him she had sold vegetables in the sun for 4 years, while he lived in comfort built on her back. He said he had meant to pay her back, that he had been going to tell her. She demanded to know when. When she was 30, when her life was completely wasted, his crying didn't move her. She stepped closer and dropped her voice to something almost calm, almost cold, and told him what those 4 years had truly cost. Not just the money, not just the university, but the years she had spent believing she had failed, believing she wasn't worthy, burying every dream she had ever carried, because he had told her to. She turned to leave. He begged her to let him make it right, said he would give her everything, that he was sorry, that he hated himself. She told him without turning that there was no making this right. He had not just stolen money. He had stolen 4 years of her life, and she would never get them back. At the door she turned back one final time and asked whether Kioma knew. He said no. Janeth said she deserved to know that her marriage had been built on lies and stolen dreams. She opened the door. Kioma was standing right there. Tears were already streaming down her face. She had heard everything, she whispered. Was it true? Had he used Janeth's scholarship money to marry her? Janeth told her yes. 500,000 naira, half of what she was supposed to receive. Then more softly she told Kioma she was sorry she had found out this way. And then she walked out of the apartment, out of the building, into the Lagos evening air. And finally she let herself break. Adams held her on the sidewalk in Surulere as 4 years of pain poured out of her all at once. Behind them in that apartment, Kioma stood in front of her husband and asked him to tell her she was wrong, to tell her their marriage and their home and their daughter were not built on stolen money. He could not. She told him to get out. He grabbed his bag, left his own apartment and sat in his car in the parking lot. For the first time in 4 years he understood. Some mistakes are too big for apologies. Janeth and Adams took the last bus back to Ogbomoso that night. The journey was silent. Janeth stared out the window and watched the city lights fade into darkness while Adams held her hand the entire way. They arrived just after midnight. Adams walked her home, offered to come with her when she spoke to Mama. She thanked him and said no. This was something she needed to do alone. He squeezed her hand and left. Janeth stood outside her mother's house in the dark, taking deep breaths, preparing herself. Then she opened the door. Mama was still awake, sitting in the small living room with her Bible. She looked up when Janeth walked in, asked where she had been all day. When Janeth said she had gone to Lagos to see Abu, Mama smiled and asked how he was, how Kioma and the granddaughter were doing. The warmth in her voice made what came next harder. Janeth sat down, looked her mother in the eye, and said she needed to tell her something important. She told her everything: the scholarship, the letter, Abu's address on the application form, his trip to the post office, his signature on the record, the money, the wedding, the apartment. 4 years of watching her daughter suffer, while he lived in the comfort her suffering had paid for. Mama's face moved through confusion, disbelief, understanding, and then horror. She kept saying it couldn't be, that Abu would never. Janeth handed her the document. Mama read it slowly, her hands beginning to shake, and then whispered a prayer that was really a cry. She asked why. Why would he do such a thing to his own sister? Janeth told her about Kioma's bride price, the 800,000 naira, the 2 installments Abu had taken. Mama's tears came as she realized that Janeth could have been in university, could have graduated by now, could have had a future, and her son had known the whole time and said nothing, not once. Across 4 years of Christmas visits and phone calls and market stalls and quiet suffering. Then Mama did something Janeth hadn't anticipated. She stood up, picked up her phone and called Abu herself. When he answered, his voice was already hoarse. He must have known this call would come. Mama didn't rage, not at first. She spoke with the slow, devastating authority of a mother who has been handed evidence of the worst thing she could have imagined about her own child. She asked what he had done. He said it was a mistake. She told him a mistake was forgetting to call home, being late to a family event, not spending years of your own sister's life on a lie. She told him she had defended him when people said he was selfish. She had told everyone he was a good man. Then she said the words that must have cut deepest of all. He was not a good man. He was a thief. He sobbed and said he was sorry, said he would fix it. She asked how he would give Janeth back 4 years of education, 4 years of opportunities, 4 years of dreams she had been forced to bury. Then she told him that until he found a true way to make this right, he was not welcome in her house. She hung up, sat down heavily, put her head in her hands and told Janeth she was sorry. That she should have checked, should have followed up, that she had failed her daughter. Janeth moved close and held her mother and said this was not her fault. They sat together, crying, holding each other, beginning the long, slow work of healing. That night Janeth lay in bed staring at the ceiling. Her phone buzzed, an unknown number, a text message from Kioma. It said she was sorry for what her husband had done, that she hadn't known, that she never would have married him if she had known, that she had asked him to leave the apartment and needed time to think. Janeth stared at the message for a long time. She didn't reply. What could she say? Kioma was a victim too. An innocent woman who had built a life on a foundation of lies, through no fault of her own. Janeth turned off her phone. And finally, exhausted, broken but strangely, surprisingly relieved, she fell asleep. Tomorrow she would figure out what came next, but tonight she rested. 3 months passed. It was now March 2025. Janeth did not speak to Abu, not once. He tried calling, texting, sending messages through Mama. She ignored everything. What she did instead was write a formal letter to the Federal Scholarship Board, attaching the post office record and explaining everything that had happened. They investigated. 4 weeks later they called her back. The officer on the phone was professional but careful with her. He confirmed that what had happened to her was fraud, that her brother had illegally accessed funds meant for her education. Then he delivered the news she had half expected. The original scholarship could not be reinstated. That program was specifically for students aged 18 to 20, entering their first year of university. At 22, Janeth no longer qualified. She felt the familiar sinking feeling. Then the officer continued. While the original scholarship was off the table, the ministry had recently launched a youth entrepreneurship initiative for young people aged 20 to 25. It offered a seed capital grant of 500,000 naira, plus 2 years of free business training, mentorship, and access to government procurement contracts. Before hanging up, he told her that based on story, he had a feeling she was going to do remarkable things. Janeth was quiet for a long time after that call. University was gone. That dream had died 4 years ago, even if she was only now learning who had killed it. But this was something new. A different path, a different kind of future. She applied. 6 months later, in September 2025, Janeth's shop opened near the main market in Ogbomoso. It wasn't big, just a small space with bright yellow paint and a hand-painted sign that read Janeth's Provisions. She sold everything people needed daily: rice, beans, oil, pasta, sugar, gari. Adams helped her run it. They were partners, 50-50 on everything. Business was slow at first. But word spread. Janeth was honest. Her prices were fair, her measurements were accurate. She gave credit to customers she trusted and always remembered when they paid back. Within 3 months she had regulars. Within 6 months she had hired 2 young girls from the market to help. Within 9 months she was making more money than she had ever made in her life. Not rich, but stable, growing, and it was hers. One afternoon in November 2025, a woman walked into the shop, heavily pregnant, about 8 months along, carrying a little girl of about 3 on her hip. She looked tired, hesitant and nervous. It was Kioma. Janeth froze. Then she asked Adams to watch the shop and stepped outside with Kioma, and they sat together on a bench under a mango tree. Kioma told her she had left Abu 4 months ago, taking her daughter and moving back to her parents' house in Ibadan. She said she couldn't stay married to a man who had done what he did. That every time she looked at him, all she could see was Janeth, the sister he had betrayed. The future he had stolen. She hadn't been able to live with it. She told Janeth she knew there was no reason for Janeth to care about her. That she had benefited from what Abu had done, the wedding, the home, everything. But that she had come because she needed to apologize, face to face. Janeth looked at this woman, pregnant, carrying a child, suffering for a crime she hadn't committed. Then she asked whether Kioma was working. Kioma said she had been looking, but with a small child and another baby coming, it was hard. Janeth told her she needed help in the shop, someone she could trust, someone who understood what honesty meant. She asked if Kioma was interested. Kioma's eyes went wide. She asked if Janeth would really hire her after everything. Janeth said Kioma hadn't stolen from her. Abu had, and Kioma had paid a price too. She had lost her marriage, so if she wanted to work, the position was hers. Kioma broke down crying. And that is how it started. 2 women, both hurt by the same man, both rebuilding together. 2 more years passed. It was now 2027. Janeth was 24 years old. Her business had grown significantly. She had opened a second shop on the other side of town. She had married Adams in a small, simple ceremony in January 2026, just family and close friends. Mama cried happy tears the entire day. Kioma was there too. She had become Janeth's best friend and most trusted employee. Her daughter, called Janeth Auntie. Her second baby, a boy, was born healthy and strong. Life wasn't perfect. There were still hard days, days when the anger flared up again, days when Janeth thought about what could have been. But mostly she was at peace. She had built something real, something honest, something nobody could take from her. And Abu? Abu still lived in Lagos, still worked his accounting job, but everything else had fallen apart. Kioma had divorced him officially in mid-2026. His debts from the loan apps had piled up, and he had been forced to sell furniture, to downgrade his apartment. His mother visited once a year, out of duty, not love. The extended family barely spoke to him. He was the family shame, the brother who stole from his sister. Janeth never saw him again, never answered his calls, never responded to his messages. As far as she was concerned, she had no brother. Sometimes, late at night, Abu would scroll through social media and find photos of Janeth, her shop, her wedding to Adams, her smiling face. Photos of Kioma and her 2 children working at the shop. The 2 women he had hurt, now thriving together. He would type out messages. "I'm sorry. Please forgive me. I think about what I did every single day," and then delete them without sending. Because he knew some betrayals cut too deep, some wounds never fully heal, some bridges once burned cannot be rebuilt. He had gained 500,000 naira and lost everything that mattered. 5 years after the betrayal, it was 2029 now. Janeth stood in her original shop one evening, counting the day's earnings. She watched Adams arrange new stock. She watched Kioma lock up while her 2 children played nearby. This was her life. Not the life she had planned at 18. Not the university degree and corporate career she had dreamed of under a kerosene lamp. But something better. Something she had built with her own hands, earned through pain and resilience and a refusal to stop. Mama visited that evening, bringing food as usual. She told Janeth she was proud of what she had built. Then, after a pause, she mentioned that Abu had called her the week before and asked if Janeth would ever forgive him. Mama said she had told him she didn't know, that only Janeth could answer that. Then she asked Janeth what she thought. Janeth was quiet. Then Mama said what she believed, that forgiveness was between Janeth and God, but that it didn't mean forgetting and didn't mean trusting again. It just meant letting go of the anger so it didn't destroy the person carrying it. Janeth nodded slowly. Maybe one day, she said. That night she sat with Adams on their small balcony, looking at the stars above Ogbomoso. He asked if she ever wondered what life would have been like if she had gone to university. She said sometimes. But then she thought, if she had gone to university, she wouldn't have met him. She wouldn't have built this business. She wouldn't have become who she was now. He asked if she regretted it. She said she regretted the lies. She regretted the 4 years she had lost believing she wasn't good enough. But she didn't regret where she had ended up. Abu had stolen her scholarship. But he had not been able to steal her strength. He had taken 4 years from her. But those years had taught her she could survive anything. She leaned against Adams and smiled at the stars. She knew. This is the story of Janeth Adeyemi, the girl whose brother stole her future, and the woman who built an even better one. Some people will betray you. Some will lie to your face. Some will steal your opportunities and watch you suffer in silence. But here is what they can never take: your strength, your resilience, your ability to rise. Abu took Janeth's scholarship, 500,000 naira, 4 years of her life, her dreams of university. But he could not take her spirit. He could not take her determination. He could not stop her from building a life that mattered. The greatest revenge isn't confrontation. It isn't violence. It isn't even forgiveness. The greatest revenge is moving forward, thriving, building a life so full and so real that the person who hurt you becomes irrelevant. They watch from a distance, carrying the weight of what they did, while you walk free. Abu still lives in Lagos, comfortable but hollow inside. The guilt eats at him every single day. Every evidence of Janeth's success is a reminder of the choice he made in that post office, the moment he had a chance to be her hero and chose instead to be her villain. He has to live with that forever. She is more than fine. She is free. She is whole. She is thriving. And she learned the most important lesson of all. Your worth is not determined by who believes in you. It is determined by who you refuse to stop being, even when the world and your own family tries to break you.